Well, we have our final panel for the conference I'm about to introduce. This is the Social Policy and Education panel. They're going to focus on how taking an agent-based approach and using systems thinking DSRP can really help us meet the needs of humans. This panel features 3 current MPA fellows who will share insights into issues that they care about using this approach. The first will focus on the issue of child marriages in Zimbabwe. Second, on the strengths and weaknesses of our public education system. And the final presentation will focus on the need to develop social and emotional skills as a means to help people navigate life's complexity and challenges. Our panelists are Paidamayo Mundangwi, Leo Hull, and Jennifer Bustamante. This session will be moderated by the one and only Margaret Weiss. And I urge you to listen. These are really great presentations, really great issues, and I think you're going to get a lot out of it. And take it away.
Hi, everyone. Let me just get on the screen.
This is the hardest part. You did it effortlessly. There you go. All right. Right.
So, hi, everyone. Thank you for taking your time to be here today and allowing for me to share a project that is incredibly close to my heart. So, as Laura stated, my name is Paidamayo Mundangwe, and I am a second-year fellow pursuing a master's in public administration at Cornell. So the topic of child marriages in Zimbabwe has been a subject of great personal interest and concern for me. So as a young woman born and raised in Zimbabwe, the well-being of fellow Zimbabwean women is of utmost importance to me. This project represents a culmination of 3 years of careful research and an analysis that was driven by my desire to deepen my understanding of this complex issue. So even before I came to Cornell, I was actually engaged in researching the prevalence of and impact of child marriages in Zimbabwe. So when I was presented with the opportunity to pursue my master's here at Cornell, I made a commitment to myself that I would use every platform available to me to raise awareness about the struggle of early marriages that actually plagues my country. So through my studies and my involvement in this project, I have sought to unravel the intricacies of the child marriage system in Zimbabwe and to understand the interplay of cultural, religious, legal, and socioeconomic factors that perpetuate this practice, and also identify the potential avenues for change. So today I'm excited to share with you the findings of my research and the recommendations that have emerged from this work. It is my hope that by engaging in this dialogue and by working together, we can contribute to the ongoing efforts to end child marriages and also create a brighter future for the girls and women of Zimbabwe. So just to start us off, when I started off my research, I kind of looked at the emergent properties. And what I kind of realized was when we interact and look at systems that we care about, we tend to look at it with our hearts. People often examine the systems that they care about with all that they see as the emergent properties, or simply the observable outcomes of the systems. So the observable outcome that brought me here today is that 40% of women in Zimbabwe are married before the age of 18. And Zimbabwe is one of the 20 African nations with elevated rates of child marriages. So through learning systems thinking, I discovered that the solutions that will solve these emergent properties of these observable outcomes of these complex adaptive systems we care about lay in understanding the underlying dynamics that drive the system. So ABA serves as a soft alternative to ABM. It offers flexibility in analyzing complex issues where intricacies are still being discovered. ABA also allows for the creation of multiple iterations of the system, facilitating a more comprehensive understanding of the complexities that are associated with issues like child marriages. So ABA being more adaptable aligns better with the evolving nature of this problem. And in essence, the choice of ABA over ABM was driven by the need for a flexible approach that could accommodate the dynamic and evolving nature of child marriages in Zimbabwe, while also addressing the challenges that were posed by data limitations. So this adaptability and flexibility make ABA a suitable tool for analyzing these complex issues where the intricacies are still being uncovered. So when I started my research, the system that I found kind of looked like this. The system that I counted was complex and it composed of intricate webs of causality. So after researching the system further, I created this DSRP map to visualize the complex relationships and interconnections within the system. The map reveals the intricate entanglement of legal mandates, cultural traditions, religion, and socioeconomic factors, as I stated earlier, that contribute to the persistence of child marriages. It also highlights the lack of cohesion between these elements, with religion and cultural traditions often operating independently from ongoing interventions. This clandestine nature of these marriages further exacerbates the isolation, resulting in minimal reported cases and insufficient data. The map also explores potential structural predictions, such as economic impact and mental health effects on survivors. As the relationships within the system become clearer, the need for a greater collaboration and synergy among legal, cultural, and religious dimensions is evident. So the next step in my research was to perform a CAS analysis, which meant that I needed to identify the key agents in the system and also the simple rules that they follow, which were driving the current password. So one of the main agents I identified in the system was the girl child. So the simple rule that the girl child follows is that her behavior is shaped by societal expectations and cultural norms surrounding marriage. There may be a lot of immense pressure from family, community, and cultural practices that influence her compliance with the system. Another crucial agent in the system is the traditional and cultural leaders. Their simple rules involve preserving and promoting cultural practices, upholding customs and traditions that are seen as integral to community identity, and making decisions related to various aspects of community life, including marriage customs. And then another agent is the apostolic leaders, which also play a really significant role as agents in the system. Their simple rules emphasize the spiritual significance of marriage and also prioritize adherence to religious principles and over secular laws. And they also make decisions on matters of faith, morality, and community life, which may extend to influencing decisions related to marriage, especially child marriages. And then my final agent is the policymakers. So policymakers are another important agent in the system. Their simple rules involve creating policies and unfortunately, turning a blind eye to the prevalence of child marriages, often focusing on electoral votes rather than addressing the issues head on. So as a part of my paper, I created a recommendation rubric, and the rubric basically sets out the baseline for what the recommendations seek out to do. The most important part was to make sure that the recommendations I provided did not only violate any of the provisions in my recommendation rubric, and I believe I was successful in doing that. So now looking at my recommendations. So my first recommendation was to actually initiate respectful dialogue with apostolic leaders. So as I stated earlier, apostolic leaders are a key agent in all of this. So they play an influential role in shaping attitudes, practices within their communities. So I believe that open and honest communication is essential to understand their perspective. Also, collaborative problem solving can help address child marriages whilst also respecting their religious beliefs. An example of where this has been successful is in Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, in collaboration with UNICEF, launched a national dialogue on child marriage, engaging religious leaders, government officials, and community members. This dialogue led to the development of a joint action plan to address child marriage within the religious context. And then my second recommendation was to collaborate with faith-based NGOs. So faith-based NGOs act as mediators between legal mandates and religious practices. Leveraging their expertise and networks can promote change. And another example where this has been successful is World Vision, which is a faith-based NGO, has been working in Bangladesh to address child marriage through a project called Nobo Jatra. And then my third recommendation is to restructure economy and also establish social safety nets. So economic insecurity is linked with the prevalence of child marriages in Zimbabwe. So addressing the root causes of poverty and lack of opportunities is essential. Another example would be in India, the government launched the Kanyashiri Prakalpa scheme in West Bengal, which provides financial incentives for girls to continue their education and also delay marriage. The scheme has been successful in reducing child marriages rates and also increasing girls' enrollment in schools. And my final recommendation is to teach legal literacy to rural communities. Legal literacy empowers communities by raising awareness about rights and legal protections related to child marriages. So collaboration between the government, law firms, and NGOs can help deliver legal literacy education. And also cultural sensitivity and community engagement are important in the design and implementation of legal literacy programs. So with that being said, I'd like to conclude with this thought-provoking quote from Joyce Banda, who was the first female and also the former vice president of Malawi. The seeds of success in every nation on earth are best planted in women and children. I believe that this quote really encapsulates why addressing child marriages is so crucial. By investing in the well-being, education, and empowerment of women and children, we plant the seeds for a brighter future, not just for individuals, but for entire communities and nations. Tackling the complex system of child marriages in Zimbabwe and creating an environment where girls can thrive, free from early marriage, nurtures those seeds of success. It gives them the opportunity to grow, learn, and become active participants in shaping their own destinies and also contributing to society's progress. I believe that change requires a concerted effort from all the stakeholders that I did mention, the government, NGOs, religious leaders, and communities. And by coming together, understanding the problem's intricacies, and also implementing targeted holistic interventions, we can really make a difference. So I think let us all take these words to heart and renew our commitment to planting the seeds of success in the women and children of Zimbabwe and beyond. Let us work together to break the cycle of child marriages and create a world where every girl has the chance to dream, learn, and thrive. Thank you very much. I'll now be handing it over to my colleague, Leo.
All right, thank you so much. Paida, that was an amazing presentation and very inspiring. So thank you for that. And let me share my screen. Okay. And can everyone see that okay? Okay, fantastic. All right. Well, happy Tuesday, everyone. And thank you again to Dr. Derek and Laura Cabrera for this amazing opportunity to speak today. My topic dove into the major weaknesses and shortcomings of the current US K-12 public education system. And as you all may already know, public education is at the forefront of creating a productive workforce and establishing an educated society of knowledgeable citizens. And that is true of every single nation on the face of the planet. However, in the United States, K-12 public education has been on the decline for the past several decades. Students are unable to meet benchmark test scores in core subjects such as mathematics and the hard sciences, and they are not developing the essential skills for success as an adult. In addition, this system has failed to reduce the inequities surrounding education and to create an equality of academic opportunity for all students. Of course, there have been numerous attempts to reform the current state of public education over the years, but with no solution to proven to be effective and consistent thus far. However, in using the ABA method, it may lead to more optimal results for education reform in the future to better address the weaknesses and shortcomings of this system. As for the ABA method, the ABA approach is a method in thinking about complex adaptive systems, or CAS, with the desired goal of coming up with new and innovative recommendations that will help to change a current real-world system to be more effective and efficient. The ABA is a method for thinkers, all thinkers, to understand the intricacies and underlying systematic patterns of a given system to then solve the problems of the CAS. There are three main steps to this method. Step one is the DSRP analysis of the system. There are 4 patterns at DSRP and 8 elements. Distinctions consist of an identity and other, systems, a part and a whole, relationships, an action and reaction, and perspectives, a point and a view. The second step of the ABA method is the Posselwood and CAS analysis. Posselwood, or the purpose of the system is what it does, is an analysis of current real-world system, as well as a Posselwood analysis of a desired future state of that same system. The current Posselwood analysis can be differentiated from a future desired state of that same Posselwood to identify root differences between the two systems and help identify the major problems. The CAS analysis, or complex adaptive system analysis, is designed to hone in on the list of salient agents, the current simple rules, and the current system level behavior to also identify the issues. As for the third step, the rubric and recommendations, the rubric focuses on specific criteria to be met so that recommendations can be feasible and will lead to the intended consequences. In addition, it helps identify the significant patterns within the system that future recommendations should meet in order to address the issues properly. And so this image is an image of my systems mapping created in the Plectica software. And as you can see, this is a very complex adaptive system. There are numerous stakeholders for this system. At the local level, you have students, parents and guardians, teachers and substitute teachers, as well as school and district administration. At the state level, you have state legislatures, state boards of education. At the federal level, you have Congress, and businesses, nonprofits, non-governmental organizations can all be found within the local, state, and federal levels. And by viewing this image right here, is clear that there are three highlighted major weaknesses and shortcomings of this system. One, there is major inequitable resource and expertise distribution as highlighted in green. Two, schools have stopped teaching and requiring U.S. civics, citizenship, and government classes highlighted in blue. Three, U.S. public schools fail at teaching critical thinking, life, and social skills as highlighted in yellow. And as you can imagine, a project like this has such a large scope, and therefore I had to use 6 major fropping rules. Fropping rules, or framing and stopping rules, are used to narrow the scope of a project. Overall, they were carefully designed to focus on this specific, narrowly tailored system, and more will be discussed in my paper. As for the Passwood analysis, the problem statement for my system was that the current U.S. K-12 public education system is failing to help students develop the essential critical thinking, life, and social skills needed to be successful as an adult. And based on that, I was able to create a current and future Passwood for this system. And as stated earlier, when you take the difference between the current and future Passwood, you get the root difference. And in this case, there are 3 major conflicts that occur. The current system is one that is primarily focused on academic goals versus the life and social skills that students need after high school or 12th grade. Second major conflict is that the current system is about memorization and the regurgitation of information versus actually developing critical thinking and cognitive behavior. And 3, the current system is administrative and administration oriented versus a system that should be designed for the end users, which are the students and teachers. As for the CAS analysis, the list of salient agents are on the left, the current simple rules are in the middle, and the current system level behavior is on the right. And of course, for time's sake, I won't go through all of these, but I will go through one just for an example. So let's look at students. The current simple rules for students: they go to school, they read the text, they do their assignments, they memorize this information for the test, they take the quizzes and tests, and they rinse and repeat that throughout their academic careers. And for the most part, they only memorize the information for a short amount of time just so that they can take the quizzes and tests, and largely they will forget about it later on. And so the current system level behavior for the students are that they learn the material that are required by set standards from state and federal legislative bodies. And this is really just memorization. And students are largely reactionary agents and are told what to learn and what to do by their teachers, parents, and everyone else that has higher authority in this system. As for my recommendation rubric, no specific recommendation should violate these 5 rules that I have set forth. Recommendations must be more life and social skills oriented rather than just focusing on academics. It must encourage more critical thinking rather than memorization and regurgitation. It must engage student and teacher voices, not just focusing on the administration. It must reinforce the importance of U.S. civics, citizenship, and government, and it must distribute academic resources and expertise in a more equitable way going forward. Which leads us to the recommendations. The first recommendation is to engage the end users, the students and teachers, in the discussion of new standards and guidelines for K-12 public education in the U.S. Currently, the system omits the voices of students and teachers, which is problematic because they are the main users, the end users, and they should be part of the conversation in setting new standards and help guide policymakers in setting new legislation. Recommendation 2 is to set new standards and guidelines for academic performance at the state and federal level that aligns with the visions and goals of the end users. And so recommendation 1 and 2 really go hand in hand. You need the policymakers to be willing to listen to the voices of students and teachers, not just listening to their lobbyists or the people that donate to their campaigns, but listening to the public and representing the voices of the people. Recommendation 3 is to discover and allocate additional or new ways of funding public schools to provide resources and expertise to the underfunded schools and districts. This is especially important because in the United States, a majority of public school funding comes from property taxes. And so you get large disparities between affluent communities and the impoverished communities. And so bridging the gap between funding can definitely create and it hopefully will create more equal opportunity for all students to achieve their academic endeavors. As for recommendation 4, is to require students to take classes in U.S. civics and government to help students become more knowledgeable about the democratic system and citizenship. In hopes of course, increasing political efficacy and also increasing voter turnout rates, because historically, the U.S. has fairly low voter turnout rates as compared to other developed democracies worldwide. And finally, the 5th and final recommendation is to offer additional courses, programs, and activities for students in public schools to learn crucial life skills while also developing key social skills. I think that's very important because we live in a digital age. And of course, with COVID, a lot of the youth have switched to, being comfortable behind a screen and may not have developed the necessary face-to-face social skills that are needed as an adult. And so ensuring that schools are emphasizing effective communication going forward will be beneficial to the overall society. And that is all for my presentation. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. And I will pass it off to Jennifer.
Thank you very much, Leo. So let me share my screen. Okay. Can everybody see my screen right now? Okay, perfect. So, hi everybody, I'm Jennifer Bustamante, a second-year MPA student at Cornell University, and I'm glad to be here presenting Life Challenges Are Overtaking Us, an agent-based approach to transform society through developing socio-emotional skills. So before starting, I want you to answer these questions silently. When was the last time you felt that life was becoming too complicated and that there were many tough situations to deal with? 1 month ago, 2 weeks ago, maybe yesterday? The thing is that life doesn't become easier. On the contrary, we will experience many tough situations at different moments and different magnitudes. But sadly, most boys, girls, adolescents, and even adults do not know how to face these challenges. Every year, 1.2 million children and adolescents die from causes that could have been prevented. 67,000 of these deaths are due to self-injuries, and 42,000 are due to interpersonal violence. 1 out of every 3 students suffers from bullying. 200,000 children and adolescents commit suicide each year because they can no longer endure bullying. 120,000 people die each year due to work or school stress. And more than 20% of children and adolescents worldwide suffer from eating disorders. And then we are here. We have spent more than 50 years fighting against suicide, bullying, and mental health issues. And the data, far from improving, are on the rise. So this is overtaking us, and we are increasingly normalizing suicide, anxiety, stress, and many other mental health issues. So what are we doing wrong as a society to fail and continue to fail in trying to solve these problems? For years, we have been fighting against the consequence and not addressing the real cause. The problem is that this is just the tip of an iceberg. What is really behind some of the most relevant mental and social issues like suicide, bullying, violence, anxiety, addictions, intolerance, self-injury, discrimination, isolation, stress, or aggressive impulses is that no one taught us how to face life challenges. So there is a lack of emotional education in children and adults, and as a result, people do not have the tools to overcome difficult situations. So it is creating more stress, more anxiety, depression, and others. Unfortunately, according to the evidence, many tragedies occur impulsively in times of crisis that undermine the ability to cope with life stress, such as financial problems, relationship breakdowns, or emotional pain. So this is not about just mental health issues. It is about social issues. So what is the solution? Transform life and society through socio-emotional skills. There is an interconnected system of socio-emotional skills that include also life challenges and social issues. Socio-emotional skills are abilities that enable people to understand, express, and manage their emotions effectively, and to understand and relate positively to others. These skills affect how people perform and act individually and in society. If people develop socio-emotional skills, they will have the tools to come up with life challenges. Life challenges are complex and demanding situations, obstacles, or circumstances that people face. These challenges can cover various areas such as health, personal relationship, career, finance, and emotional or psychological aspects. Life challenges can arise from unexpected events, difficult decisions, changes in personal circumstances, luck, or any other moment that may involve stress or discomfort. If people can face life challenges, they will contribute to solving some of the most structural social issues. These social issues that are challenges that affect society as a whole and that require a policy approach. So we need to achieve from short-term fixes to long-term strategies. The purpose of a system is what it does. And currently we have a possibility to have people that have to face life challenges, but instead of facing them effectively, they are avoiding and suppressing emotions. So this is creating more anxiety, stress, and depression. And on the other side, we have the government that is focusing in solutions, but these are short-term solutions, so that just enables them to focus on the tip of the iceberg. So the thing is that stress, difficult moments, and unempathetic people are part of the world, and they will continue to exist. But what if instead of trying to eliminate them, we train children and adults with the skills they need to face those challenges? What if we transform our pursuit to an ideal one in which people who know that life doesn't become easier, but they can face it? If we teach people to identify, name, understand, and act according to their emotions, they will be able to develop the most basic soft skills like self-awareness, resilience, empathy, self-regulation, and confidence. And according to the evidence, this will create more motivation and lower risk of addiction, less bullying, less depression, and more health and well-being. This is a general map of 5 of the most important social issues that developing socio-emotional skills can help. A complete map in Plectica, you can see that in my paper. But from poverty, health and well-being, education, and inequality to peace and justice developing socio-emotional skills can break negative relationships and contribute to solve some of these issues. So just zooming in one of these, peace and justice. The lack of peace and justice is characterized by intolerance, violence, and discrimination. These create the inability to create proper relationships. And as a consequence, people has less ability in romantic relationships, less ability to resolve conflicts, and increase crime rates, aggressivity impulses, and antisocial behavior. Developing empathy, self-awareness, and emotional regulation can reduce the risk of having the inability to create proper relationships. And as a consequence, it will break some of those consequences that create and perpetuate intolerance, violence, and discrimination. Also, zooming in mental health issues, having mental health issues is characterized by less ability to set and meet goals. These create and increase the risk of anxiety, depression, and suicide. And as a consequence, people tend to have lower life expectancy and increased risk of substance abuse. Developing self-motivation, gratitude, and resilience can reduce the risk of having less ability to set and meet goals. And again, it will break those relationships that continue to perpetuate and increase mental health issues. So the root differences: understand the root cause of problems versus tackle the tip of the iceberg. We need to focus on long-term solutions versus short-term solutions. Developing skills versus avoiding or eliminating situations. And the last one, preventive approach versus reactionary approach. We don't need to wait until life challenges appear to be ready to solve it. Also, we need to redefine simple rules for society transformation. Parents and families, they need to integrate socio-emotional skills development into their educational approach, foster cultivating these skills in children to contribute to forming integral and complete human beings. Schools and teachers prioritize the teaching of socio-emotional skills alongside academic subjects, recognize their importance in children develop, and creating well-rounded individuals capable of navigating life challenges. Society, they need to learn socio-emotional skills, express and manage emotions, adapt to change, and incorporate feedback, empowering them to face challenges and contribute to social transformation. Finally, the government, they need to shift from merely identifying and prioritizing problems to deeply understand the root causes, implementation of long-term evidence-based strategies that target the core issues. So the recommendations rubric rules are basically 4. Prevention focus, individual change for social change, evidence-based strategies, and universal applicability. For the first one, equipping individuals with socio-emotional skills before challenging arise, fostering proactive problem solving. Developing socio-emotional skills empowers individuals to understand, express, and manage their emotions, equipping them to face life challenges. Ensure the credibility and effectiveness of the socio-emotional skills development programs by research and empirical evidence. And finally, accessible and relevant programs to individuals across diverse social contexts, promoting inclusivity and equitable access to socio-emotional development. So the conclusion: empowering individuals, transforming society. Focus on prevention through socio-emotional development can break negative cycles and foster positive individuals and society change, addressing the root causes of the problem. Developing socio-emotional skills empower individuals to understand, express, and manage their emotions, equipping them to face life challenges. And socio-emotional skills development can help address complex social issues and create a more justice, equitable, and thriving society. Thank you very much. Now I will pass it back to Margaret, and I'm open to answering any question you might have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to all 3 of you for your amazing presentations. It is just such a gift to hear from each of you about things that I know are not only important to all of us, but have been huge areas of focus for your personal, educational, and professional lives. So thank you for bringing your knowledge and your energy to these presentations. I want to point out a couple commonalities that I noticed between the 3 before we dive into some questions. All of you emphasize the importance of zooming into the details of your chosen area of focus, which I think is so important. You know, your maps, and I know having used that software, how intricate those maps can get. And so I think it's so important to be able to zoom in and see how all these pieces are, but also be able to zoom out, right? And see the larger picture and the context. So I really appreciated how each of you delved into how that shows up in your particular area of focus. I also really appreciated all of you focusing on long-term solutions and engaging with people who are directly involved or impacted by your issue. So often we talk about these issues and about the people who are impacted by them, but I really appreciated how you engage with those actual people and those processes, which is so important when thinking about how to change hearts and minds through policy. So I know we have a lot of interesting questions and comments from the audience. I want to make sure we can hear from each of you. And just a note that any questions that we aren't able to answer in this session can be answered afterward in writing by the panelists. So I want to go back to you, Pi, and ask you a question about your research. You highlighted this complex interplay, right, between legal mandates, cultural traditions, religion, socioeconomic factors, and how they perpetuate child marriage in Zimbabwe. Among these factors, which do you believe poses the greatest challenge in terms of addressing this issue?
Thank you so much for that question, Margaret. So when I often think about my research, like the common phrase that I often use is the legal leap and the societal stride, because I feel like a lot of people like to just think of specific issues and they just think about the legality of it all, like, oh, let's just change the laws and everything will be fine. I feel like Zimbabwe is a really perfect example of where that doesn't work. There's been a lot of landmark cases that have changed the laws regarding child marriages. There's still a lot of contradictory laws that exist, like the Criminal Act contradicts the marriage laws, and they're still working on that. However, Zimbabwe is a country that's really governed by religion and culture. So unless you can get cultural and religious leaders on board, the government won't be on board. So I really believe that it's important to engage, as I said in one of my recommendations, is to engage these cultural and religious leaders to make them understand what harm this is actually having on, besides just society, on the economy, because we're being robbed of young girls who have so much potential. And that's really affecting the economy as well. So I really feel like engaging this cultural religious leaders is the first step. And also they make up a really big chunk of the electoral vote. So once we get them on board, 100% the government will be on board. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's really, I think it's so interesting because we often, I mean, not that laws aren't important. I think that's not what you're saying, right? It's important, of course, for us to push for those types of change, but it's equally, if not more important for us to actually make sure that there are additional systems in place where those other agents are able to help those laws be implemented in a way that is also culturally consistent and all of those pieces. So thank you so much. This is sort of related, Leo, to a question that I have for you, which, I'm thinking with your focus, one of your recommendations had to do with improving or re-implementing civics education in our K through 12 system. I'm curious that and your other recommendations, was there a particular piece of the education system that felt like a more difficult to sort of understand or to think about what recommendations you might make?
Yeah, if you look at my actual map again, there's a section where I had to branch off and almost create its own branch. But for the sake of time, I couldn't expand upon it. But it was really the funding of public schools. And I was diving into literature and seeing that a majority of public schools are funded by property taxes, and just seeing the different avenues that the US could probably do away with that and find other sources of funding and more equitable funding that doesn't rely on purely property tax base. So I think that was one of the main things that I would like to expand upon in the future if I were given the opportunity to.
Great, that's super helpful. Thank you. So Jen, I'm curious, similar to my question for Leo, I think you also have this like super intricate, very interesting way of looking at how to further develop socio-emotional skills for people. I'm curious, what do you see as the biggest challenges or the biggest barriers? What have you, I know you have a nonprofit that you oversee that works on this. So what have you experienced as the biggest challenges?
Thank you very much for that question, Margaret. This is a really interesting question because most of the challenges involve a multifaceted approach that includes supported family environments, balance of use of the technology, mental health support, and educational practices. But to answer that question, I will identify three main challenges. The first one is the digital overexposure. social media and the constant exposure to social media can lead to comparisons, cyberbullying, and reduced face-to-face interactions, which are crucial to developing empathy and these all soft skills that we need to develop, and emotional regulation as well. The second one is the lack of a positive role models. A study says that the most effective way to teach someone social-emotional skills is by example. So we also need to teach adults to be like the example for their children. If adults do not have social-emotional skills, it will be so difficult to children to grow up with those skills, even if in the school they put it. So one agent that it's key is our parents and families. And the third one that it's more like in a social terms is like all these socioeconomic factors or inequality of accessing to emotional education. Emotional education also is a privilege. Not everybody knows like the importance of this, and it depends. There is a huge gap between socioeconomic staff that can determine if someone has or not access to socio-emotional education. So those are like the three challenges that I will say: socio-emotional, socioeconomic factors, lack of positive roles models, and digital overexposure.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think, these are skills that I think your point about we often focus on how do we teach young people certain skills. And I think we neglect to remember that all of us were young people once too. And we, have been doing the best we can with what we have, but there's also space to educate all of us as a lifelong process, right? And ways that we can engage with new ideas and new skills throughout our lives. So I have a question that is related, that comes from some of the questions in the chat, but also is impacted just by what I know about the program that you all are in. So I know that here at our program at Cornell, we have a lot of international students. 2 of you are international students. I'm curious to know how your experiences living and learning in different countries, and also just having that experience of interacting with folks from all over the world, how that has impacted the way that you see your issues and or the ways that you have put together your maps. So that's a question for anyone who wants to share.
Okay, I can start if you want. In my case, it have impact a lot in the way I see these issues, and in general in the way I face challenges, like understanding different perspectives from different people, different countries, different cultures. It's incredible to how we can use that to improve as a person, and to know that the thing that I have learned in my country or in another place is not the final truth of anything. So trying to understand other experiences and how people approach other kind of problems have been like really insightful in my case, and it have confirmed in my particular problem, like in my particular topic, it have confirmed the importance of developing social-emotional skills, because living abroad, knowing, like, go to a new country in which you don't know anyone there, speaking a different language and all this stuff, it's a real challenge. But I'm completely sure that if you have the necessary tools to face those challenges, you're gonna be completely fine, and you will find this experience like really, really insightful for yourself.
I can step in here. So I feel like I really resonate with what Jennifer just said. I do feel like it's very it's the experience of kind of going to school in like a different country or living in a different country is really eye-opening, especially in like when it comes to my subject. I've spoken to so many people about the issue of child marriages, and everyone has had such a different perspective or understanding of it. And I feel like growing up in Zimbabwe and like being privy to a lot of cultural traditions and a lot of things, you kind of start to live in a bubble of understanding, or you even become complacent with certain things that you shouldn't be complacent with. And I guess kind of stepping out of that and kind of seeing it from another lens is really helpful, and just kind of, I felt like it really helped my research, and it helped kind of elevate my thinking. So yeah, it's quite great.
Yeah, and if I may add, I just want to commend these wonderful ladies for, taking the, deep dive into like going abroad and going to a new society and like trying a new system out and being able to thrive in it. And I love hearing about the various different social issues from other nations, such as Zimbabwe. And so it's just amazing to get a worldwide perspective, and it does change how you look at the world and how you look at even the US, like from a domestic student perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all for that. Leo, this brings me to a question that came up for you in the chat, which is, did in your expansive look at the US education system, did you use anything that you've learned from that international sort of perspective to impact how you mapped or what your recommendations were? Was there any international impact on that?
I did initially start with literature review of comparing the US with international public education systems. I was looking, I believe, at Sweden or Norway at the time, but the system just became so large. And I guess that's the best part about these complex adaptive systems, right? That they are so complex and you can go on forever and you can add on various parts forever. So really for me, I needed to limit myself. I needed to set up the fropping rules to make sure that I was staying focused on just this specific topic. But if I were to expand upon the system, or if other system thinkers would like to expand upon the system, then I do welcome that. And I would, in the future, would like to look at international sources as well.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you to all three of you for your amazing work, for your engagement with these important issues. I, for one, am so honored to call you colleagues, and so grateful for the work that you are doing in the world and the ways that you bring justice and goodness and growth to the world. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for these presentations. And I will hand it off to Derek and Laura.
Thanks so much, Margaret. Thanks. That was a great panel, great issues, great discussion, moderation. Margaret, thanks so much. That was really, really interesting. And I knew it would shine. It was last because, got to save something strong for the last too, right?